All right, we're off and running on the Krueg Show. Hope everybody's having a phenomenal Friday. Let's strike up the band. There we go. Here we go. There we go. Welcome to the Krueg Show. It is June the 23rd, 11 a.m. on the West Coast. We're talking 49ers with Jack Hammer, who covers the Niners for the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Back with us, a little co-branded show. It's on my channel. It's on Jack's channel. It is brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Corte Madera and in Emeryville. Open 7 days a week in Marin, Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Jack, good to see you, man. How are you?
Hey, it's good to see you too, Larry. I'm doing good. It's Friday. Excited for the day. Got some fun stuff planned for tonight. So it's all good right now.
Sounds good. And, of course, training camp is just around the corner. I titled this one, Will Trey Lance be quarterback 3 in week 1? And, wow, just, really Adam Schefter on with the Pat McAfee show with A.J. Hawk and Pat the other day basically said some interesting things. He came out and said, there's no trade market at all for Trey Lance. It almost made it sound like there's never been a trade market for Trey Lance. Went on to say that Brock Purdy, if he's healthy, is the number 1 quarterback. But to me, if there was news from that segment, it was this little nugget that Sam Darnold has the edge on the number 2 job going into training camp. What did you think of that? I mean, it's like the other news in this was that the 49ers are optimistic that Purdy's going to be ready for Heinz Field and the Steelers in week 1, and that there's a very detailed plan in place for Purdy. He'll be closely monitored all summer from exactly how many throws and how often he throws and how often he's on the field, and how much Purdy actually plays in the preseason at this point is unknown and could just be conjecture. But what did you think of the revelation that, one thing that we knew, which was if he's healthy, Brock Purdy's the number 1 quarterback. But the one that, to me, the 2 revelations were, one, that there's no trade market at all for Trey Lance. And Schefter made it seem like there was no trade market at all for Trey Lance during the draft. And that Sam Darnold has the clear edge on the number 2 job going into training camp. There would be no way for us to know that other than if our eyes told us that during minicamp. And I feel like I've got a pretty good eye for it. I didn't necessarily see Darnold as better than Trey Lance in any way, shape, or form based on what I saw. And Schefter did seem to throw it out there that this was not a report or inside knowledge or anybody telling him anything, more his sense of it, reading the fact that the Niners pursued Darnold so heavily at the beginning of free agency. So what do you think? I mean, these guys are in the business of being right. They've been wrong before, as people will remind me over and over again. Schefter thought that the Niners were going with Mac Jones, and he was wrong. So he's wrong on this. That's the pushback from the people who are like morally offended if Trey is not the guy. I'm a little bit more open-minded to how this thing's going to go down than many others. Give me your read.
Let's start with the no trade market for Trey Lance. I read that a little bit differently or heard it a little bit differently. For me, the way that I heard that, the way that it came across to me was that the 49ers weren't getting the offers that they wanted, and they weren't getting anything that was really making them want to move on from Trey Lance. That's what I took from it. Again, I could be wrong, but that's kind of the way that I read into what Schefter was saying there in terms of with Trey Lance and not being traded during, earlier on, like in the run up to the draft and so on. I just don't think the 49ers got anything that was going to make them want to jump on that. And then in terms of, quarterback, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, I agree with you on this one. I don't think that either of these guys have separated themselves from each other. I think that, there's some good things that each of them did during OTAs and minicamp. There's some bad things that each of them did during that period. And the one thing that Schefter said that really caught my attention and caught my attention back when it happened was picking up Sam Darnold on day 1 of free agency. That says something about the interest of the team in the player. And it also says, I think, something about the interest of that player with the team. And I do think that there could be something to that piece of it. A guy like Sam Darnold, he's going to have options. Why would you come to San Francisco just to sit and be the number 3? And we've had this discussion a little bit in the past, but I don't think you come and sit here if you don't think you're going to have a chance to be the backup or play. And that's the one thing that Adam Schefter said that kind of thought of that when it first happened. I tweeted about it on my Twitter page and all that kind of stuff about, hey, Sam Darnold's getting paid a good amount of money to come over here and be a backup. So that's the one thing, though, that he said that really caught my attention.
There's a value to Trey Lance being on this team and being, even if he wasn't the starter, even if if you wanted to take the premise that Darnold was going to be number 2 going into training camp, Trey Lance has value. He plays the most important position on the field, and he's young and healthy, willing and able. That I know that sounds like a very low standard that I'm throwing out there, but ultimately, when you look at the way last season ended, that has value. And to me, I would move off Trey Lance, but not for anything but more value to their Super Bowl run than what he represents in the present. So in the present, he represents value. And the only way I'd move off of him is if some team offered you something that was of greater value to you winning the Super Bowl. So, but it is interesting that there is this constant drumbeat nationally on Sam Darnold, as if, Darnold, is a clear-cut has a clear-cut advantage on Trey. I just don't see it that way. And if it is that way, then, it's let's just say this. It's not showing itself on the football field. Randall says, how about we let training camp play out before assuming the greatest thrower of the football in Niner history has already beat out Lance in OTAs? I agree with that. I really do. I have no problem with, establishing that, Purdy is number 1 based on the way last year went. And the depth chart after that should just be like everybody else is number 2 until proven otherwise, right? And you can just share reps. Today, maybe Darnold's the 2. Tomorrow, Lance is the 2. If you want to make Brandon Allen the 2 on day 3, that's the way I would go. I would, I don't even know if Purdy's going to be on the field, but if it came right down to it, if I had a depth chart, I'd have Purdy 1, and I'd have Darnold, Allen, and Lance all just on that 2 line with a big question mark, and roll the balls out there and let's see.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what the team is doing. They've said that Purdy's the leader in the clubhouse. I think they expect him to come back, or they're hoping he's going to be back. As far as the whole quarterback situation, I want to see a competition, or I think there should be a competition. Let these guys decide it on the field. Let there be no doubt to the players on the team and so on who is performing at a better level. I know they're in their meetings, and so they get a better, good sense of that anyway. But let's get it out on the field. Let this thing play out. I think you go into this, and Sam Darnold has to beat out Trey Lance, because Trey Lance, provides. He's something that provides more value to you possibly in the long run. So I think you just let these guys get out there. And the only one I would disagree with you on is Allen. I don't think he deserves to be in that number 2 quarterback, competition, but we'll see how this thing plays out. I think it's going to be interesting. I think that, we don't know what's going to happen with Brock Purdy, even though I feel like he's going to be back sooner than people are saying. We still need to see what he does on the field. We still need to see if he's the same guy, or if he's, maybe a little gun shy after the surgery and all those types of things. There's a lot to be determined here.
And I'll push back and just say on the Brandon Allen thing, he was number 2 to a better quarterback than they have right now in Joe Burrow a year ago in Cincinnati. So I don't have any problem putting him as number 2. It's funny. A buddy of mine who scouts called me this week and said, Krug, I'm going to make a bold prediction. Because I said, give me some bold predictions that are based on real knowledge from a real pro scout who draws a real salary. And he's like, I'll give you one right now. And it's one that I've heard in a couple spots from different people around the league that I've talked to in the last month. And this is a buddy of mine who actually draws a check from a team in the AFC to scout. And he said, the people that I talk to feel that Brandon Allen is going to beat out Trey Lance and Sam Darnold when it actually matters, when the games start, because his assessment is that Brandon Allen is more of a gamer, that Brandon Allen has more mobility within the pocket, that he can operate, similarly to Brock, and that he can operate the play action game and the bootleg game and show the movement ability within the pocket. That he doubts that the other two guys can, and he says there's a sentiment around the league that says that Brandon Allen's going to wind up being number 2. Now, I mean, I don't. Greg Papa talked about this a couple of weeks ago on the radio, and it went viral, and people tore up Papa for saying this, and to the point almost where he walked it back a little bit. But I understand where he's coming from, because maybe he's talking to some of the same people that are talking to me. I haven't seen enough of Brandon Allen nor studied enough of his game to say what his ceiling is or floor. So I'm more of like and I'm almost hesitant to do any research on him, because I just want to hit camp with no preconceived notions, with no preconceived pecking order, with no depth chart in my head, and I just want my eyes to tell me what I see. And sometimes if I read too much, it clouds my assessment of what I'm watching. So I try to not do too many deep dives if I can avoid it. But I'm also not making that up. So, is it possible that we're not giving Brandon Allen his, as far as, the respect that maybe he deserves? I mean, there's a lot of people that feel like, he may have gained something from his experience in Cincinnati.
Sure. It's the situation that we were in this time last year. Nobody was giving any respect to Brock Purdy. I felt like he was a guy that was going to struggle to make the roster. Not really struggled to make the roster. That's not saying it correctly. I just felt like he might have a hard time making the roster at the end of it once they added Jimmy Garoppolo and they had the 4 quarterbacks, just because of the money that was had been given to Nate Sudfeld. I thought that was going to be a determining factor there, and it wasn't. And that was a good move by the 49ers to not let that happen. So there is a possibility here that we are underselling Brandon Allen a little bit. We need to see what's going to happen once they get onto the field and they have the live bullets flying that you have in training camp. Because, up until now, we really haven't seen them very much in a team atmosphere. Most of it's been 7-on-7 and those types of things. We haven't really seen much of these quarterbacks going up with a pass rush around them and those types of things. So we'll get a better feel for that during training camp. And like I said, I remember last year during training camp, I felt like Brock Purdy was performing at a pretty good level, especially during the preseason games. He just continued to move the offense every time he got a chance. And let's see. Let's give him a chance. Let's see what he can do. And, you can never say never. Everybody that's why they do this, right? If you knew exactly what's going to happen, then we wouldn't watch the games.
Monty Watts says Purdy needs to reestablish arm strength. It takes at least a month or 2 before you can sling it in a game. Monty, maybe. I really don't know. What are you expecting to see? I mean, we have no idea what Purdy's schedule is going to be, if he's going to be out there just like last year in camp, or if he's not going to be out there at all. Is he going to play in the preseason like we saw last year? Is he going to take a regular run in the preseason? Are they going to sit him out? Precautionary reasons? It's all guesswork at this point, isn't it, Jack? I mean, that to me, it seems like, before we talk about, what realistic goals are, and, the Niners are optimistic that Purdy will be ready for the Steelers in week 1. Okay. But how's that going to manifest itself in the practices when this team hits the field? Do you expect him to be out there? Do you expect him to not be out there? Do we have any indication of the workload that he may shoulder early in camp?
They haven't given us any indication on what it's going to look like. And I think until he's cleared, we're not going to see him on the field, at least with the team. We might see him throwing on the side field or something like that, but kind of like what we saw with Garoppolo last year. But I wouldn't expect to see Brock Purdy actually dressed for practice unless he's cleared. And then in terms of this comment by Monty, where he says Purdy needs to reestablish arm strength, it takes a month or 2 before you can sling it in a game. That's where he's at now. That process of reestablishing arm strength began the moment that his throwing began. That's why that was such a critical piece of understanding when that was happening, because the way that this injury goes through and the rehabilitation that they go through is you get that 3 months or whatever the date is. Once they get cleared to start throwing the ball and start doing their throwing regimen, that's when they are starting to rebuild and reestablish arm strength. It's not we're going to get to where he's cleared in August and then he needs to reestablish arm strength. That's been ongoing since late May. So if he is cleared and when he's cleared, I expect him to be able to come out and perform and do everything that the 49ers would ask their quarterbacks to do. That's part of being cleared with this injury.
Jay Mills says, wow, Jack and Larry, two dudes you do not want to meet in a dark alley. I'm not sure about that. Not sure if that's a compliment. Digital Drew says, let's go. Friday Krueg is the best Krueg and Hammer. Good times. Like and subscribe. 20,000. Here we come. Yeah, I'm sitting at 19,200, trying to close in on 20,000 subs before training camp. We can do it. We can do it. And we're having a lot of fun doing the channel and talking a lot of Warriors this week with the draft coming up last night. We'll talk a little Warriors later on today. All right. Next question on the Niners. The Super Bowl window. Is the Super Bowl window coming to a close? I bring this up, Jack, because I one of my favorite things to do is to buy the annual magazines, whether it be Lindy's or Athlon's or whatever. And the reason I like these magazines, one, it's interesting. They print them ahead of time, several weeks ahead of time, but they also spend a lot of time. They know it's an annual, right? So they write an article, or they have somebody like yourself who's a good writer write an article or two at the front of the magazine. And a lot of those articles are freaking awesome. Really, really good stuff. Like they give the writers months to put these things together. They get great concepts. And sometimes there's some really good stuff. Sometimes you're getting some like scouts opinions. Sometimes you're getting some thoughts that maybe we just missed or maybe a look at a different way to look at the draft or a different way to look at quarterbacks or personnel or whatever. And so I usually buy them for those articles at the front. One of the articles in I think it was the Athlon annual, had teams whose Super Bowl window is closing. And so I'm like, oh, that'll be interesting. It's like the top 5 or top 10 teams whose Super Bowl window is closing. So I hadn't even read all the articles, but I'm like kind of thumbing through it. Number 1 on the list, 49ers. I found that very peculiar. Why? Because Trey Lance is a virtual baby. So is Brock Purdy. The quarterback is kind of a key spot. All the Niner quarterbacks are young and cheap and and the arrow's pointing up, you would think. Then I'm also looking at a roster where there was a ton of rookies last year. And, you look at the personnel, the Niners really Trent Williams is the only guy I can really think of that's, maybe towards the twilight. And granted, he's a left tackle. It's a key cog in your team, but it's not like, oh my God, they lose Trent Williams if he decides to retire at the end of the year, disband the franchise and let's all move on. 49ers are still going to be one of the 3 or 4 favorites, my guess, even post Trent Williams. So I just would push back in a huge way on the 49ers window closing. I don't see it that way at all. I see the arrow pointing up on a lot of football players. And I see very few guys at the end. I don't know. Where are you on the 49ers Super Bowl window? Are they in the middle of it? Or are they at the end of it? To be the number 1 team whose Super Bowl window is closing, you would think that Tom Brady was their quarterback, or Aaron they'd signed Aaron Rodgers. And, I'm not really getting that. How do you see it?
It's an interesting one. I get it if you want to say that, some of their top guys are retiring or, at the end of the road, but you hit on it. It's offensive guys, Trent Williams, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk. But beyond those 3, which of the key 49ers players are really near the end of the road? On defense, they're all young. They just drafted a guy to replace Tayshaun Gibson on the back end of that defense. Other than that, they have a ton of, their key pieces are all in place for a long period of time. And I would say the 49ers Super Bowl window is open as long as Kyle Shanahan is the head coach of the 49ers, because the way that he's able to work this offense, even when some of these top guys are out, they still move the ball, they still put up points. And As long as they keep that defense intact, and it's, I would think that Kyle Shanahan can find a new left tackle. He's not going to be as good as Trent Williams, but one that's serviceable. I think he can find another fullback, to replace Kyle Juszczyk and all the things that he does. And I also think that, George Kittle is a very good tight end. Don't get me wrong with him, but I do think that if they need to, they can find a guy that can make the plays. They've won how many, they have played well. They have put up big numbers when George Kittle wasn't on the field. It's just part of the deal. And one of the main reasons that, they don't win when George Kittle's not on the field is usually because they don't have a quarterback playing very well.
And I will say this, the time goes by fast in the NFL. 1 year is not really like 1 year. 1 year in football is like 3 years in basketball, 3 or 4 years in baseball. Guys do get old quick. Guys' bodies fall apart, in a game. Your career can end at any moment. I know when I looked at the Niners with Willis and Bowman, I thought, you know what, this duo is going to be the inside linebacking combo on this team for the next 5 to 7 years. And like 2 years later, they were both out of the game. And so it can go fast. I'm not ignorant to that fact. I just see the 49ers with the arrow pointing up on so many players. I just don't see them as a team that's window is closing. Shanahan's not old. Lynch is not old. There's several young talented players. They got a full complement of draft picks. They're not leveraged. To me, they seem to be, I don't want to say they're right in the middle. They're definitely not early on their Super Bowl window, but I don't know that I would say they're at the end. The next topic I want to get to is Mike Florio came out and is like adamant that the 49ers are going to, are going to be in this Kirk Cousins mode. And he's like really adamant that the Niners and the Rams are going to battle it out for Cousins at the end of the year. He went on the Rich Eisen's show and, basically said that, McVay and Shanahan will fight over Kirk Cousins next offseason when he becomes a free agent. I really think Kirk Cousins is a last resort kind of an option for the 49ers and probably for the Rams as well, to be honest. As long as they have Stafford, there's no reason for them to pivot to Cousins. Now, if Stafford is going to call it quits early, then maybe I could see Cousins being an option for the Rams. But the only way I see Cousins being an option for the Niners is if all of their quarterbacks this year show that they're not the guy. If all four of these guys show, you know what, for whatever reason, they're not the guy going forward, then next year I could see the Niners interested in Cousins, let's say, over an option in the draft. But I still got to put that as maybe a 5% chance. I really believe in Trey and Purdy and Darnold and Allen, that somebody of that group will take the reins and run with it this year. I think it's very unlikely that Kirk Cousins is here. What do you think?
I agree. The only way, why would the 49ers be interested in Kirk Cousins if Brock Purdy comes back and plays anywhere close to what he did in year one? That doesn't make, so that for me, that's one. Or let's say Brock Purdy isn't able to return and Trey Lance goes out and Trey Lance plays well. I just don't see this constant desire to upgrade to these old guys who are at the end of the road that are extremely expensive. And especially a guy like Kirk Cousins. I mean, it's one thing if you're talking about Tom Brady, because at least Brady's won games. Like, he's won Super Bowls.
Right.
Kirk Cousins hasn't, Brock Purdy, I think, has more postseason wins than Kirk Cousins. So this just doesn't, hold water for me. I'm not, Kirk Cousins is a fine quarterback. He makes lots of plays. He gets a ton of yards because they throw the ball so much in Minnesota. But when it comes down to it and the chips are down in big games, he folds. And I just don't see the need to bring a guy like that in.
The next big game that Kirk Cousins wins may be the first big game that Kirk Cousins has ever won. And I've interviewed him a couple times. I really like him. He's an affable, nice guy. I think he'd be a phenomenal face of the franchise. He's going to do good things in the community. I'm a Kirk Cousins fan, but this idea that he's somehow a savior is ridiculous. And what somehow so Kirk Cousins, who's like 34, is going to play this year with the Vikings. And at age 35, he's going to be a better option than Purdy and Lance and Darnold and Allen. At 35, and if he goes on some deep playoff run in Minnesota, he's not going to be available at all. So Kirk Cousins, after another failed playoff run, is somehow going to be a better option than all of these other guys. I'm not seeing it. Artur Gazarian says, which team has quarterback depth that's better than us at the moment? I remember after Philly, Krueg said that this cannot happen again. We cannot lose another season due to a quarterback who can't compete, and I think the Niners agree. I don't want to say I agree with Artur because he's kind of agreeing with me, and it's a circular thing. I'm agreeing now with myself. He's right to agree with me but ultimately, let's go back to the end of that Philly game. I walked out of that thing going, this can't happen again. They can't run out of quarterbacks because they just don't have a guy. And that's what happened at the end of last year. They just ran out of guys. So I do understand the kind of trepidation when you see a Sam Darnold or Brandon Allen. If you're a big Purdy fan, if you're a big Lance fan, you would like it to almost be a Purdy or Lance deal. And you're like, what are these other guys even doing here? But hasn't Shanahan and Lynch really responded to exactly what Artur is talking about? That, man, last season ended in a way that we never want to see again. And how do you avoid that? You get as many qualified quarterbacks as you possibly can in your camp. And they're doing exactly that. I can't fault them at all. I can't even say that I would do it even a little bit differently than the way they've done it.
Yeah, I would say if the 49ers keep all four of these guys that they have right now and they go into it, they are in a better position than they were last year. I mean, when they opened up week one last year and you had Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Brock Purdy, you felt pretty good about that room. And then unfortunately, all those guys got knocked out. And so now you're left with Josh Johnson. If it's Purdy and Lance and Darnold, I think that's pretty close to what you had last year to start it. But then you have Sam, if you can keep Brandon Allen in your practice squad, keep him in Santa Clara somehow so that if it does come up where you need your fourth quarterback, then I do think the 49ers are in a better spot than they were a season ago. But yeah, that's one of the things, I keep seeing people say they need to make a decision. They need, if Brock Purdy's the guy, you need to get rid of Trey Lance. It's not fair to Lance. This isn't about being fair. It's about having the best team possible to win. You prepare, you expect the best, but you prepare for the worst. And I think that's what the 49ers have done here. And that's what, go back to, everybody likes to talk, you have so many people that are ripping on the 49ers. They like to rip on Kyle Shanahan. Well, go back to 1988, 87. That's what Bill Walsh did, right? He had Joe Montana coming off of a back surgery. He made the trade for Steve Young, and he pushed Steve Young to try to make him the starter. It didn't work out, but either way, they had a really good quarterback. They had I think the greatest quarterback of all time in Joe Montana, and they had a guy behind him that could play. And once they made the decision of what they were going to do, it worked out perfectly for him. And it really set the franchise up for a long, sustained period of success. And I think with where they are right now, they're kind of in that same situation, not calling any of these guys Joe Montana or Steve Young, but they're just building a good group that I think can carry them through this season, and the goal here is to win the Super Bowl. Anything else this year is a failure.
Will Purdy win over the Lance fans if he continues to play well, or is that really not possible? I mean, in my mind, I'm a Niner fan, right? I grew up in the Sunset. I'm a Niner fan. I want to see them do well. I'm okay with anybody doing well. When I say that, I sincerely mean it. If we get to training camp and Brandon Allen is just lighting it up and he looks awesome, and we get to the preseason and Brandon Allen is leading them up and down the field to the most points, I got no problem in week one in Heinz Field seeing Brandon Allen there. But you know what? I think there's a lot of people that they don't just want to see the Niners win. They want to see the Niners win the way they want to see the Niners win. Does it, if you're wed to Brock Purdy, does that mean that you're not wed to the Niners if they don't go with Brock Purdy? If you're wed to Trey Lance, does that mean that if Brock Purdy plays well in the preseason or in week one, that you're just sitting there, I can't wait until he goes down? Or just do these people pivot and say, well, you know what, I wanted to see Lance, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And man, we're winning games, and go Niners. Or is it going to be this season long, deep down resentment? I mean, I've actually seen idiots saying the Commanders didn't have Cameron Curl. And I'm like, what? We're really going there? Chase Young was on a snap count. What? I mean, are we really trying to discredit what Brock did? What Brock did, I don't think people understand that most quarterbacks, even the greatest quarterbacks, and I did a deep dive on this the other day. I did a video on it. Of the 30 guys in the Hall of Fame, I would say 25 of them started really slow, including Joe Montana, who was 2-6 in his first 2 years, and Steve Young, who was atrocious in Tampa. You would think that people would have a little bit more perspective and go, wow, what Brock's doing is truly amazing, and get on board. But will they get on board, or is it just going to be this, I want my guy, and if my guy's not in there, I'm just going to be in this kind of hesitant, miserable mode?
The way that I see this is the Trey Lance fan, or the fan that wants Trey Lance, the folks that are content creators that are pushing Trey Lance, that are pushing kind of what you're saying. The only way that Trey Lance wins them, or that Brock Purdy wins them over, is if he wins the Super Bowl. Anything else? See, that told you that Brock Purdy couldn't win the Super Bowl. I told you that they needed to get Trey Lance out there. I told you that Trey Lance had to be the quarterback, because you have to have that threat of the deep throw. I mean, just kind of pay attention to what you've heard people saying on their shows, on Twitter, or what have you. It's all there. What they're saying is, I'm going to support Brock Purdy, but if they lose, I'm going to blame Brock Purdy, because Trey Lance could have done it better, because Trey Lance has the bigger arm. Trey Lance is the bigger guy. Trey Lance is the faster runner. So that's the difference, and I think that's where the disconnect is. I think that most fans, I'm not saying everybody, but I think most fans, most people that are following the team would say that Brock Purdy is, capable of doing it. They're going to say that they like him, but at the end of the day, they're going to tell you that if the 49ers don't win the Super Bowl, it's going to be Brock Purdy's fault. And just wait. Let's wait in February. Watch as this goes through. If Brock Purdy is the starting quarterback when the 49ers will lose in the playoffs, if that's what happens, it's going to be Brock Purdy. And you're going to see a lot of, I told you that this wouldn't have happened if it was Trey Lance. That's why the backup quarterback is everybody's favorite player.
It is so true. The other thing I've noticed is that the same people who want to discredit Brock, they didn't have Cameron Curl. He didn't come from behind enough. He didn't do this. He hasn't done that. They're also the exact same people who would be, when it comes time to talk about Trey Lance, are like, there was a monsoon and Shanahan's not doing it right. And that, they're kind of apologizing for Trey at the same time of questioning Brock, as if like we can't see that there's a clear agenda there. But it's in a way I understand it, but in a way I feel like, man, it just seems like, there's a clear agenda. And when in reality, if you're a fan of the team, all you really want to see is the team win. And the team did nothing but win under Brock Purdy. You would have thought that would get people, but the same people were saying, but he can't do this and he can't do that and he can't do this. And then, okay, let's switch it over to Trey. Well, there was a monsoon and then Kyle did this and he didn't have CMC and there was no Kittle in one game and Cameron Curl didn't play, and just like, what? It just seems like we're in that mode now where there's a common denominator now and there's a pattern. And what we're seeing is the same people that are questioning Brock, when it comes time to talk about Trey, it's like they're going to excuse and make up different things to say why he failed instead of making him own it. It's like, well, he didn't fail. The weather caused it and this caused it. And Debo had a drop and the defense didn't do this. And Brock, this guy Rollins who made this video, it wasn't Brock who did great. It was the defense provided more turnovers, and they won every game. They averaged almost 35 a game. He was a rookie quarterback who played in the preseason, sat out 3 months, and then hit the ground running without any knowledge of that he was going to play at all, and played near flawlessly. I mean, compared to, and then he's got no ability to get better. He's as good as he can be. Really? I mean, I asked Brock a question when we had a chance to at minicamp, and I said, where are you now compared to last year? And he's like, oh, night and day. It's night and day what I know now compared to what I knew last year at this time. Nobody wants to discuss that. Nobody wants to factor that in. It's like he's hit his ceiling. I mean, he won't get any better. What? He's going to get better. He's going to get a lot better. I don't know. Maybe I'm too dug in on this. Maybe I'm too.
No, I don't think you're too dug in on it. I think I find it to be fascinating.
It is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it really is fascinating.
He came out and they won 8 games, and it wasn't until he got knocked out that they lost. And yes, Christian McCaffrey helped this team out. There is no doubt about that. That was one of the reasons I wanted them to trade for him long before they did. I thought he would be a difference maker for the offense, and that's great. And he was a big help for this team. The other piece on the defensive side, did that happen? Absolutely. The defense definitely did a good job of helping them out. And I think, look at the result, the defensive turnovers that were forced during that point. Just take a look at Eric Armstead. Nobody wants to talk about, they're all talking about Christian McCaffrey. Nobody's talking about the fact that when Eric Armstead came back is when all of a sudden the 49ers started getting these turnovers. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that when Eric Armstead was healthy last year, the 49ers got 24 of their 30 turnovers that year. That is really good, but nobody wants to talk about Eric Armstead because he's on defense and it doesn't matter. But Brock Purdy, he played very well. He did what was asked of him. What's he supposed to do? Is he supposed to go out there and tell the defense to play so that it makes it harder for them to complete a pass? I mean, this is going to be a topic as long as Kyle Shanahan is the head coach of the 49ers, because 49ers get guys that are wide open and they're able to make these throws. And as a result, you don't have the, PFF big time throw stats and all that other garbage. I look at the film like of the game against, you see the people pointing out the really good throws from Trey Lance against the Chicago Bears. Those are over routes. They're the same over routes that Jimmy Garoppolo completed over and over again when he was the 49ers quarterback. They're the same over routes that Brock Purdy completed over and over again. This offense, one of the things that Rollins did a really good job is he was right when he said that this offense is the same stuff. Well, what did you expect? Did you expect all of a sudden that Kyle Shanahan was going to completely throw away his offense because he had a different quarterback going there in terms of Brock Purdy? I mean, that's the one part of the whole argument that just makes no sense. And then also the people that say that Brock Purdy hit a ceiling, he's 8 games into his career. He knows that he has things to clean up. Watch the game, watch the film. You can see the mistakes that he made. And even with the mistakes that he made, he played at a high level and he can improve from where he was. So I don't buy into it. Now, could he fall apart? Sure. Just like every quarterback could. But I know as long as Kyle Shanahan is running it, and if he's healthy and he's the same guy that he was before the injury in terms of mentally, I don't see any reason why he's going to take a major step back and he can't come at least close to what he did last year.
Brock made it look so easy that we took several things that other quarterbacks struggle with for granted. When he went out in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, the Niners couldn't even get plays called on time. I mean, they literally could not get up to the line of scrimmage and just get the plays called on time. Now, is that more of a knock on Josh than a pat on the back for Brock? I'm just saying it's like some of these things that we just kind of assume happen naturally don't happen naturally in intense, loud, hostile surroundings like the Link in the playoffs. And those kinds of things, I think a lot of people just kind of assume, hey, you know what? This is going to happen. Everything's going to be hunky-dory and smooth. All right, I want to throw a question to you that I threw to Jesse the other night. Mm-hmm. If you had to bet everything that you have, because Jesse and I disagreed on this, if you had to bet everything that you have that Brock Purdy and Trey Lance are both going to be franchise quarterbacks in this league, or that neither are going to be franchise quarterbacks in this league, where's your money sitting? Jesse was like, and said neither. and played the odds, because the odds are that there aren't a lot of franchise quarterbacks. And so I understand why he went in that direction. But I asked the question because I actually think it's the opposite. I think both guys are franchise quarterbacks. I just think what we're looking at is an incredibly raw prospect in Trey that's going to take a while to get there, and Brock Purdy, who's, I think, a franchise quarterback. We just haven't seen quite enough to cement it. I think there's many of us that suspect he may be, but don't, need to see more, because, hey, you don't want to judge any quarterback off, 8 or 9, 10 starts. You don't want to be, fall in love that soon. But I would actually say both are going to be franchise quarterbacks, and I believe it to my core. Where are you? Both or neither with Brock and Trey as franchise quarterbacks in the future, not presently, in the future in the NFL?
Thing, but the part where you said that I have to bet everything I own, that's the only part that would make me say that I'm probably going to say no. But when I look at the situation, I really feel like there's a possibility that Brock Purdy could be a franchise type quarterback just based off of what he did last year. We have a small sample size of it, but that's a terrific start to an NFL career. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And if he can continue to build, then I don't see a reason why. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about a little bit ago. If he's fully healthy and his mind is all right and he's not worried about getting hit and those types of things, and he can improve his game from where he was in year one, I don't see any reason why he can't become that franchise type of quarterback that you have around the NFL. It really, I guess the part of that question depends on what you would say a franchise quarterback is. Because I think there's only about 3 guys in the NFL right now that can carry a team to a certain extent, who, guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I'm not sure if there's another one that really carries their team. And so I think part of it comes back to what is your definition of it, and we'll see. I mean, there's a possibility that Brock Purdy, I think, can be, high level NFL quarterback, very high level. And I think that with Trey Lance, I think the road's a little bit longer there because he doesn't have as much experience. But if everything breaks right for him, he might be able to get there too. Our good buddy Jordan Elliott, he's been doing some really good stuff. I saw he putting some film out on Twitter last night of Brock Purdy in the game against Tampa Bay, and there are plays in that game that are just really, really high level quarterback stuff that I don't think people really understand just how high level some of those throws were. I mean, the touchdown that he threw to Brandon Ayuk, he just gets absolutely blown up, but he stands in the pocket, he makes the throw, and he got hit a number of times in that game. And there was another one where it's just a short little check down to Deebo Samuel on the left flat, but he gets absolutely lit up. But he has about, that fast to turn around and get the ball out of his hand to Deebo Samuel, and his ability to make that throw. That's just really top level quarterbacking play. And the 49ers got that out of him last year. And I just don't see why it's all of a sudden just going to vanish. So,
by the way, the one that to Ayuk was very reminiscent. Now, not quite, because Leonard Marshall had a little bit more of a running start, but very similar to Leonard Marshall. His hit on Joe Montana that broke Montana's hand and knocked him out of the NFC Championship game. Brock moves left. He comes all the way back right. And instead of throwing it on the run, he set his feet. And here comes a defensive lineman. I don't know who it was, but he keyholed him pretty hard from behind. And this was after the ball came out. So he threw a perfect dime to Ayuk, and he put it at the pylon. And Ayuk just dropped it. I mean, it couldn't have been delivered there any better if you drew it up. But Brock took a monster hit there, and he got up. Guy's a tough kid. Guy's tough.
Yeah, and that was the wild card game that one happened. I was talking about the touchdown against the Bucs, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that's one of the things I've seen. I recognize that really right off the bat. I just don't put it out there because I don't want everybody to yell at me about comparing him to Joe Montana. But yeah, no, it's 100% accurate. That the way that Montana rolled out, he stops to throw the ball and just gets absolutely blown up from behind. It was very similar to what happened, and Purdy got back up. And that's, again, people want to talk about injuries or what have you. The only injury that knocked him out was an injury which he absolutely could not play, and that's because he couldn't. I mean, and even then, he went back in the game. Like when he literally was back in the game with a torn UCL in the NFC Championship game. He was actually playing. So if you want to talk about 49ers quarterback injuries and all that kind of stuff, this is the guy who won the NFC Championship playing with an injury. Right, he had, I can't remember exactly what the injury was, but he had an injury.
Was it the oblique or what?
Yes, he had the oblique injury. Had the oblique injury, plays through it on a short week. They win the game up in Seattle, plays through the injury. Then you go into the NFC Championship game. He gets injured on the 6th play. He can't throw the ball, but they still throw him back out there, and he plays most of the entire second half because as a result of it. And people are questioning this guy, and it just makes no sense. And those same people are going to tell you about Trey Lance and his inability to throw with a broken finger, which I understand it's tough, but it's like, come on, man. Let's realize what's going on here. This guy didn't step out of any game. He didn't leave a game injured and not return. That's something that I think is part of why I think Kyle Shanahan likes him so much. He likes his quarterbacks to be tough. I think that's one of the reasons that he really liked some of these other guys like Carson Wentz back in the day and so on.
Sean Shepper makes a super chat of $20. Thank you, Sean. He says Schefter's comments come from two sources. Colin Cowherd's extended leash and pre-trade propaganda. So we will accept a low ball trade for Trey. No market. Sam ahead. Seen his practice, etc. Propaganda to accept 1/5 when we gave 3 firsts. I don't know that Cowherd has a vested interest in what the Niners get back for Trey, but just the fact and in some ways, and I understand Cowherd is an opinion maker just like any of us, except he's doing it on TV. But because of his situation with his daughter having dated Trey, every time I see him in kind of an anti-Trey mode, I can't get away from that. And it just seems like almost like, I don't want to say he should stay away from the topic, but it's just, he's maybe a little too close to it to really be impartial. I don't know. And I don't want to question, I don't know Colin at all. I don't want to question his professionalism. I don't want to say that anything from his personal life is bleeding into his coverage of Trey, but at least I would say this, Colin, if you're going to make videos that are in any way sliding Trey Lance or in any way could be perceived as negative for Trey Lance, I think it's almost imperative that you either have full disclosure up front or at least acknowledge at the beginning of your videos that once upon a time you were as excited as anybody in the country about Trey Lance's future and his potential. You know what I'm saying? I would hear his videos better and I would take him more seriously. He doesn't have to bring up his daughter's relationship, but I think, he was glowing of Trey Lance on draft day. At least acknowledge that publicly every time you do a video that in any way slights him. I think you will add more credence and more power to what you're saying if you acknowledge it. Instead, I always feel like he is trying to almost want us to forget that he was a big Trey Lance fan initially. Like if I'm a huge fan of whatever, and then all of a sudden I'm anti on that same topic, I'm starting the video with, hey, guys, truth be told, I used to be a huge fan of X and X, of so-and-so, but because of this, and this, now I'm not, and let's get into. Don't you think? I mean, I don't know. That's just that's my own thing. It's like I really believe in full disclosure to at least be a little bit more honest with your audience about your perspective and where you're coming from. That's just my. What do you think of this comment from Sean?
No, I think that honesty is always good on that kind of stuff, or why things changed or what have you. I don't pay attention to Colin Cowherd enough. I don't to really know everything that he's said, and I know the first thing that came out that kind of started this whole thing was when he talked about Trey Lance's arm fatigue, right? And that ended up being true. So what is he? I that's where I just I have a hard time with without knowing everything that he said about Lance. I do think that maybe there's a part of his that relationship going south that might play into some of his negativity towards him, but I don't know how much that would be. And I like what you said, though, as far as, hey, just go ahead and lay it all out. And I don't think you need to do it every single time. But if you just really lay it out on the table at least once, then you can go from there.
A couple interesting ones. The Car God says, Larry and Jack, great show. Quick question. Spanish sports networks are reporting that Trey Lance might get traded to Minnesota for some picks, and that Sam Darnold impressed coaches for that second quarterback role behind Brock. I don't speak Spanish, so I couldn't, even if I tuned into the Spanish networks, I couldn't tell you what they're saying. Is there any credence to what Car Gods is saying? Are there Spanish sports networks reporting that Trey could be traded? I will say this. I don't believe the idea that nobody wants Trey Lance. I don't. He's too good of a kid. He's too grounded. He's too solid. He's too athletic. There's too much potential. The quarterback position's too important. There's a dearth of good NFL quarterbacks. Even if you don't think he's ready, even if you, like me, you think he needs development, there's 100 quarterbacks that will be getting jobs in the NFL. Where would I rank him today? I'd probably rank him in the 20s. I'm not ranking him 105. I'm ranking him probably 20, around 20, 25. So to me, there's going to be a handful of teams that should have interest in Trey Lance. And I got to think if you're Minnesota, you got a new regime. You're trying to turn things over, turn over your cap. You got some older players. They said goodbye to Dalvin Cook. They're going to move to Neil Hunter. That sounds like they're open to turning things over. Cousins maybe on his last year there. To me, a guy like Trey would almost be just a perfect prospect for them to invest in. It would be a very popular decision among their fans, I would imagine. What do you make of this this chat from Car Gods?
No, it's an interesting one. I don't speak Spanish well enough to be able to listen to the Spanish networks. I'm pretty much limited to "Hola, yo soy Jack Hammer. ¿Cómo está?" But beyond that, I can't listen to it. But I think that you mentioned it. I think what you said really answers this question a little bit. Is I don't see Trey Lance getting traded to Minnesota for picks. You went through a lot of the good reasons as to why this could happen, but really what it comes down to is that I think if the 49ers are going to trade Trey Lance to Minnesota this year, it's for a guy like Daniil Hunter. I don't think they're going to trade him to just recoup draft picks. We talked about it already. The 49ers quarterback position, they have a need to have depth there and a lot of depth. I think they like having a lot of depth at that spot. If they can pick up a guy if it means Daniil Hunter or something along that lines, then maybe they make a move. But other than that, I just don't see it. And as far as Sam impressing the coaches to be second behind Brock Purdy, maybe there's stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. But
he could be impressive in a meeting. I don't know.
No, he could be. He could be very, and that's one of the reasons why the 49ers fell in love with Trey Lance was he was very good at the whiteboard. But maybe he's very good at in meetings. Maybe his practices when we weren't there were much better than when we were there. Who knows? Because we didn't get to see every practice like we will during training camp. So who knows? We'll see how it plays out. But I don't see them trading Trey Lance to Minnesota just for draft picks.
Jim Everett, the great, says Trey wants out. No, he doesn't. I mean, this question has come up. He has been asked very directly, hey, Trey, would you like to be traded? And literally as soon as he anticipates that the question is about being traded, his nonverbal is like, no, and he's very believable. I mean, I feel like I get a pretty good sense of people. I've talked to many, 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 many players, and I feel like I know when someone's lying to me. I feel like I get a pretty good idea when they're telling me the truth. And I just trust me, Jim, when he said, Jim Everett, the great, just trust me when I say this. Trey doesn't want to be traded. He absolutely doesn't want to be traded. He wants to be a 49er. He wants to succeed with the 49ers. I feel there's, I can't speak confidently about everything, but I definitely can speak confidently about that. Trey wants to be a 49er. Jack, do you have anything that you can add to that?
No, that's what he's told us. That's, he's gone up to the podium. He said he doesn't want to leave. He was asked a question. He said, no, I haven't asked for a trade. I haven't, I want to be here. Again, we're not privy to everything, but I would say that I think he's being honest there. I do think he wants the opportunity to compete. I think he wants the opportunity to try to beat out Brock Purdy even. I think he wants to try to win the job. I think he wants to be in San Francisco at least for one more year.
Yeah, at least based on what I've seen. Okay, couple non quarterback issues. Are you ready? Can we discuss anything but Darnold, Lance, and Purdy? Are you prepared? All right, here we go.
We made it through almost an hour with that.
All right, couple more before we wrap this up, and we love talking to Jack Hammer, and Digital Drew's right. Friday Krueg is the best Krueg because that's when I'm feeling the best. It goes back to my childhood. I hated going to school. I loved my friends and I loved playing sports and I loved, having lunch and recess. But man, I was in a great mood, Jack, as a little kid on a Friday afternoon. You know what I mean? Every Friday afternoon, I was like, yes, it's the weekend. You know what I mean? And on Sunday nights after dinner, I'd be, a whole nother week of school. Who is going to be, and this is, I think, a very important question for the 49ers this year. The starting tackles are going to be Trent Williams at left tackle, Colton McKivitz at right tackle. Who is going to win that job as the third offensive tackle? And do you think, I look at the options as Matt Pryor, who they signed from Indianapolis, Jalen Moore, who I really like, but he just has not. He hasn't been given any opportunities, or he hasn't progressed. I don't know what. Then there's Leroy Watson, who I think looks quite a bit better this year than last year. That was very noticeable to me. And even Alfredo Gutierrez, who I'm not a huge fan of Alfredo as a future NFL starter, but he even looks better, quite a bit better than he looked a year ago. Who do you think wins the third offensive tackle spot, or do they go outside the organization? This is not just another spot on the roster. This is a very important decision, who they go with as the third offensive tackle. Where's your lean there?
My lean on that one is more towards Matt Pryor than Jalen Moore.
Okay.
And the only reason, and really, this kind of goes back. It's kind of like our discussion about the backup quarterbacks, right? We haven't seen enough. We've seen Jalen Moore struggle. We haven't seen Matt Pryor yet struggle with the 49ers. I haven't been impressed with Jalen Moore once he's been on the field. Other than he had when he first, his first start, I think back in 2021, he played okay. But other than that, he struggled. So I would say, I think Matt Pryor has a really good chance. And I would say if I had to rank them, it'd be pretty much in that order that you just mentioned. It'd be Matt Pryor, then Moore, and then Watson, and Gutierrez at the bottom.
Do you think they go outside? Do you think, this is an important spot. You want to make sure that third tackle is a guy, because, you're probably going to need that tackle. And this is almost like directly related to the health of your quarterbacks. Do you think that they will make any kind of an investment out to maybe pursue a third tackle from outside their roster currently? Or do you think the third tackle is going to come from within?
I think it's probably going to come from within. You have free agency to go out there and find these guys. There's nobody that's out there right now that's a third tackle. I don't see them making a trade to bring in a third tackle. And then in terms of the guys that are out in the free agency market, I'm not sure if there's anybody that's an upgrade over what they already have. So I don't know if I really see them making a move there. But it is interesting. They do have one spot open on the roster because they cut the linebacker this week. So they do have an open spot that they're going to need to fill. We'll see if it's a tackle or if it goes maybe to a wide receiver or another position.
Do you have a main concern about the 49ers at this point? It's June 23rd. We're less than a month away from camp. This is the quiet time in the NFL. Most of the coaches are, enjoying some much deserved time with their family, recharging the batteries, getting away from the facility. Was it Steve Wilkes that told us Steve Wilkes is sitting on his porch in North Carolina smoking a cigar? He's smoking a cigar, and he really painted a picture, and I could just have him sitting on the porch smoking a cigar. I kind of like Steve Wilkes, but give me your thought on your concern. Do you have a primary concern for the Niners here in late June?
Yeah, my biggest concern with them is offensive line. I think it's the right tackle spot we just got done talking about. I think that's the one that concerns me the most. I don't think it's a deal breaker. I do think they're going to be better than people have portrayed them to be from last year, or maybe even going into this year. But that would be the one thing, just because you're going from Mike McGlinchey, who you knew what you were going to get out of him, and you're not sure yet what you're going to get out of Colton McKivitz or Matt Pryor or any of these other guys that they have competing for that spot. So I would say offensive tackle, offensive line, particularly right tackle, I think is my biggest concern. I know some people point to the defensive line. I just don't see it. I think the 49ers really spent a lot of money, really focused on keeping that defense at the highest level possible. So offensive line is my right tackle in particular.
I'm concerned, and tell me if you think this is, nitpicky, because I really think this roster is pretty loaded. Ton of receivers, ton of backs. Whether we like the quarterbacks or not, there's a bunch of them. Pretty good tight ends, a bunch of O linemen. The linebacking core, there's going to be some really good guys who are going to be available to other teams, I got to think, at the end of this camp, because that's how many good linebackers they got. They're even deeper in the secondary with some good young players. I'm really concerned about defensive end. Now, Drake, I think it looks like ready for a breakout year, but it may be a tall ask to ask him to be the starter opposite Bosa and not really play in a rotation, but just man every snap. Then you got Bosa, right? And Bosa's special. Hargrave and Armstead inside as the tackles. Then you got Kinlaw and Givens and Kalia and McGill and Marlon Davidson. I think they're fortified inside. I'm concerned about the defensive ends behind the starters. Kerry Hyder, I think, is more of a effort guy. I love his motor. I love his effort, but I just don't know. Cleveland Farrell, a lot of people, I didn't see anything that made me say, he's going to be good. I just didn't see it. I never saw Robert Beal in any of the practices or mini camps or OTAs. Never saw him. I wasn't looking for him. I wanted him to kind of show himself to me. I never saw it. I never saw him show anything. Same with Austin Bryant. Same with Darryl Johnson, who they just picked up from Seattle. Same to a degree with the practice squad, Alex Barrett. I'm a big Spencer Wagey fan, I think it's Wagey. I'm a huge fan of that kid from North Dakota State. I like him, but I'm concerned, Jack, about defensive end. And I don't even think they just need a body. I think they need a player. They need a Montez Sweat. They need a Chase Young. They need a Daniil Hunter. They need a Houston or Ngakwe or somebody. I mean, I think they need a significant player. I was watching the playoff games again on the All-22, and we forget what a huge role that Amenahue and Ebukam played on this line last year. Those guys were major factors for the 49ers. And if you don't believe it, go check those films again. I'm very concerned about defensive end. What's your level of concern? And did you see anything from those guys I mentioned that can reassure us that maybe they're deeper than I think?
No, I didn't. I don't have the same concern on that side. I think because of the additions they made there, I think if Javon Hargrave is the guy that they expect that they're getting, that his addition along with Eric Armstead being healthy, and then Nick Bosa just doing what he does, those three alone are going to elevate that defensive line. And then that other defensive end spot is if they can just, if Drake Jackson can get out there and get them 6 sacks this year, which he was halfway on the way to last year, if he can now pick up 6 this year and everybody else does what you expect them to do, I think this defensive line is much improved. They brought in Cleveland Farrell. We'll see what that looks like and how well he performs. This is a guy who has underperformed throughout his career in Las Vegas, but the 49ers have a way of getting those guys to all of a sudden come in and produce. There's some folks, looking back in 2018 who were saying bringing Cleveland Farrell over Nick Bosa even. So let's see what that looks like. And I think, if you need to make a move over there, you bring in a guy like Justin Houston in free agency. I think that would make sense. But the way that group is currently situated, I think it's really, going to be just as good as last year. The Ferns are expecting to be better, and I would say it could be. I think it has the potential to be there just because of the addition of Hargrave.
Are you familiar with the coach?
With the coach here, I know that he goes on with Grant.
So Coach is going to be on my channel tomorrow at 9 a.m. Coach, good to see you. I'm fired up to have the coach. Had a great dialogue with him. He's got a very rich football background as a coach, knows a ton. But I was saying to the coach, I love his passion for the game, and I love how direct he is with his commentary. He's going to join me on my channel for the first time tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., and I'm looking forward to doing regular stuff with the coach. And Coach throws in a super chat here. And Coach, you don't got to throw us cash, man. You're a made man with me, man. But he says there's clearly an agenda, and you guys are on the other end of it. When week 1 hits, we'll all be one big happy family. Until then, you don't have to discredit anyone who doesn't agree with you both. I agree. I mean, I don't have a side in this. I know there's people that are like, you're a Brock guy because I predicted Brock to be a player last May or June. So I get, I'm synonymous with being pro Brock. But I'm as I told you, I told Jesse, and I really believe it. I think Trey Lance is a franchise quarterback, and I think Brock's a franchise quarterback. And it's funny because I've had people say you have an anti-Trey agenda. And I'm like, that's funny because I've got my, you can check my Twitter, and I've got millions of minutes and hours of content on YouTube. And if you can find any in there where I'm ripping Trey Lance, I'll challenge you to go find it. But I definitely think that he's right that people have, there's clearly people have some form of an agenda. And that, unfortunately, it goes beyond winning. And that, unfortunately, is kind of the dark side or the ugly side of just people's, and I see it here, in the chat. There's I didn't single them out, but there's people in here like Sam Darnold sucks. I don't think Sam Darnold's very good either, but he's 25. Kurt Warner didn't even make it to the NFL until he was 28. He's in the Hall of Fame. Sonny Jurgensen didn't play until he was 27. He's in the Hall of Fame. Len Dawson never did squat until he was like 26, 27. He's in the Hall of Fame. These guys are all older than Sam Darnold. I get it. Sam Darnold has looked like crap with the Jets, and he didn't look a whole lot better with Carolina, and he turned it over with USC. But let's pump the brakes, because Steve Young looked awful in Tampa and is a Hall of Famer because of what he did with the Niners. So maybe, Brian Billick said, Coach, to me in an interview years ago, he said, Krug, you know what? The hardest thing to evaluate in our sport is to evaluate the quarterback versus what is going on around the quarterback. And it's like, when he said that to me, I was like, you know what? Damn, that's almost, it's really true. And that's all I would say is that maybe Sam Darnold's not very good, or maybe the Jets surrounded him with nothing and just said, Sam, make it, save our bacon. And he just couldn't do it. I will say this though, Coach, if a guy like Darnold, who didn't play well with the Jets and didn't play a whole lot better with Carolina, I mean, he's got a highlight reel, but he also made a lot of negative plays. If he comes here and he's still piling up negative plays and inconsistent play and tons of turnovers, he's done. He's done as an NFL starter. That's really all I could say about that. I really don't, I don't really have anything else to add on that other than I'm going to wait and see on all these guys. We're talking about 3. They're all prospects until they do it, right? And they're failed prospects until they succeed. And right now, Sam Darnold is a failed prospect. And who knows where it goes from here. But, Coach, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Go ahead, Jack.
I was just going to throw in there, too. I think that a big part of what he's talking about when he's saying, not discrediting anyone. I don't think he's talking about the players here. I think he's talking about our discussion regarding the way that are people going to not be are they going to be rooting against Brock Purdy because they're a Trey Lance guy, that kind of thing. I think that's really what he's getting at here. And he's saying, discrediting anyone in terms of who they believe in. And what I'm going to say to this is my comment earlier was just watching what people have said, knowing the way that these things play out. People are setting this up so that, because just look at it. They have said that Brock, you need to have a guy that can throw the ball downfield and give that threat if you're going to win a Super Bowl. People have said that Brock Purdy can't do that. He doesn't threaten people. They've said that Brock Purdy, they don't believe is the long-term solution for the 49ers. All these different things. People have set this up so that if the 49ers don't win the Super Bowl with a quarterback other than Trey Lance, they have set it up so that they can say, see, I told you so. And that's all I'm saying. And as far as discredit anybody, it is what it is. I mean, I'm just going to, there's somebody in the comment section that's been going off on his own Twitter handle, on his own YouTube channel about this whole thing. I'm going to leave it right there. People can go and do whatever they want. You can say whatever you want. And if you disagree with somebody, that you disagree with them. And I disagree with people quite often. And I don't have a problem with telling them directly to them, whether it's on their YouTube channel or whether it's on Twitter. That's the one thing that I won't do is I'm not going to say something about somebody in particular or disagree with somebody in particular and do it without having them either a direct response to them or making sure that they're in the ad. I don't say it. I had one of these last weekend. And it's fine. Disagreements are fine. It's totally fine to disagree with somebody. And just let it all play out. As far as your comment here, Coach, all I'm saying is you can see what people have already, you can see how people have laid the groundwork to it.
Yeah. I would just say, you know what? None of us can predict the future.
Mm-hmm.
If we could, we wouldn't be doing YouTube channels. We'd be in Vegas somewhere, laying down wagers because it's just the way it is.
Absolutely.
And also, you know what? I'll say this as somebody who's done personnel evaluation, people evaluating people is an imperfect thing.
Absolutely.
And we're never going to be 100%. Nobody's going to bat 1,000. All I would say is when it gets into name calling and you're a this and you're a that, and that's where I'm just like, bro, there's the door. I don't want to listen to it. Don't start to make you're a this, you're a that. How quickly we get into, it goes from we're having a discussion about quarterback prospects into character assassinations. We cannot have character assassinations. Terradome says the Krueg show, don't forget, they'll get a book on Brock and the league will catch up. I mean, maybe. Yeah. I will say this. There is something to be said for you have to have requisite arm strength. How's that defined? We could get into that, but you also have to be able to hit all the boxes. Like if you watch somebody show you the field, you got the short throw to the right, the short throw to the left, the short throw in the middle, the intermediate throw to the right, the intermediate throw to the left, the intermediate throw to the middle, the deep throw to the right. There's 9 boxes, let's just say, for a quarterback. You have to be able to make completions in all 9 boxes. That is part of the reason that the Niners drafted Trey Lance is because Jimmy stopped making plays in the deep boxes, especially in the deep outside boxes. When you have no downfield passing attack, DBs lean forward and they don't and they destroy you underneath with monster hits. That's why Danny Gray is so valuable. That's why Ray is so valuable, because you have to have deep speed to make them honor all 9 boxes. But then you also have to have a quarterback who can complete passes or at least make attempts in all 9 boxes to make the defense believe that you will threaten them down the field. If you don't have a downfield passing attack, they play you in a 12-yard box and they beat the tar out of your receivers underneath, and it cannot continue. So you need deep speed. That's why Danny Gray has value, even if he doesn't catch a whole lot of, a ton of passes. You got to have that deep speed, and you got to have a quarterback who can at least take those chances down the field. Brock did that. He has requisite arm strength. At least he did, right? We'll see post-injury if he still does.
Yeah,
Terradome's. Oh, go ahead, Chad.
I wanted to hit this one. It's great. It's a super chat, and he's a member of your channel and everything. And I see this a lot. Yeah, I see. Where they say they're going to get a book on Brock. I don't. This is the argument that people made about Jimmy Garoppolo from 2018 on. They're going to get a book on Jimmy Garoppolo, and they kind of got a book on him. But even though everybody kind of expected Jimmy Garoppolo was going to throw the ball between 15, 20 yards and in, between the numbers, the vast majority of the time, those types of things, guess what? The 49ers still were very successful with him at quarterback. And that's where this whole getting the book on Brock, unless all of a sudden, again, this goes back to our conversation earlier, if all of a sudden Kyle Shanahan's not the head coach of the 49ers, then I might put some credence into this whole they'll get a book on Brock. As long as Kyle Shanahan is still the coach and he's working with Brock Purdy, I don't buy it for a bit, because everything that the 49ers do, everything that Kyle Shanahan does has an answer to it from there. Just go back really quick. If you go back to the game against between Miami and Tampa and Seattle, those three games, the 49ers ran the same play a number of times in their passing game. It was basically where they have a bunch of guys all in once. It's basically where they have a little short curl. They got a guy running a corner, and then they got a back coming out of the backfield on a swing. And they ran this play over and over and over again. And Brock Purdy is the only quarterback that I've seen under Kyle Shanahan hit every single player on the field. He hit the short curl. He hit the backside post. He hit the flat guy. And guess what? When the Seattle Seahawks saw it and they thought that he was going to throw the short pattern, guess what Brock Purdy did? He hit George Kittle for a big touchdown. It's the first or second play of the second half of the game. That play that they ran that play so many different times, and he hit all four of those receivers at one point. So don't tell me that they're all of a sudden get a book on Brock Purdy and they're going to shut him down. It's false.
Couple last supers before we bolt for the door. Let me see. Do I have any other question that I wanted to ask you? Oh yeah, I do have one more question before we get to the super chats. Okay. What player? This one I think is kind of an interesting question. Tell me what you think of this one. Give me a player or two that you think can single-handedly change the trajectory of this season by himself. That's not a quarterback. So not non-quarterback on the Niners that you think can change the trajectory of the season by himself.
Deebo Samuel fits that bill, right? With his ability to make plays every time he gets the ball in his hands. If Kyle Shanahan works him down the field a little bit more like he did in 2021, he could put up huge numbers once again. I think that's one of the big things. Deebo Samuel needs to get the ball down the field more often. If you can get that to him, and then his run after catch ability, I'm not even saying like deep down the field. I'm saying just give them the ball 5 to 10 yards down the field. Let him work in that space. That would be fantastic. So I think he's one. Christian McCaffrey falls in that category as well. Over on the defensive side, you've got Fred Warner and his ability to make plays. The sacks that you get out of Nick Bosa are huge. The one that I would say most people might not be paying attention to is Deommodore Lenoir. I felt like if you go back and you look at what Deommodore Lenoir did from the moment he got put on the outside after Emmanuel Mosley went down through the postseason, his passer rating allowed was under 70. And I think that in a lot of ways he played as good, if not better, as Charvarius Ward.
I'm going to go with Jordan Mason.
Yes.
I think Jordan Mason has big time ability, man. I think he's got an ability to change the trajectory of this season by himself. I think he's going to, last year he should have played. He didn't. This year, the depth chart's still stacked. I don't know how much he's going to play, but if he gets a chance to play, I think that's a player that can change the trajectory of this season by himself. I think he's that good of a football player. I think he can move. I'm not saying he's better than McCaffrey, don't get me wrong, but I do think he's going to be the number 2 back and make a huge impact and not just be a end of the game plugger between the tackles. I think he can be a dynamic player. He's about 225. I think he played at 240 last year. And he looks fast. And at 225 and fast with that kid's talent, I love him. In fact, I'll say this. He was teammates with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think at G-Tech, I think both these guys fire. I think Gibbs fires for the Lions, and I think JP Mason fires for the Niners. And I think there's a chance JP has a huge year. Travis Stewart says $1.99 just for the hell of it. Thank you, Travis. Jay Mill says, please, Jack and Larry, take my lunch money. It's all you're getting for lunch these days, $2. You're not getting a whole lot. David, thank you, though. David Velez says, since Kyle took over, the Niners have had 13 quarterback injuries, requiring them to miss time. My abacus says the 2 quarterback injuries per year. That's 2 quarterback injuries per year. Get a real offensive line, please. I hear.
That's an interesting one real quick, just to hit on it, because I know that people keep wanting to talk about the offensive line. I'm going to say this just real fast. The injuries to the quarterbacks that we saw this year, the first one I think is scheme related. You have too many guys coming for the defense to block, and then you don't have your receiver who's your hot read turned around. So either Garoppolo's got to throw it at his feet or do exactly what he did. I don't blame that on the offensive line. The injury to Brock Purdy in the NFC Championship game, that's a tight end situation. That is not a offensive line situation. That again goes back to scheme. The injury to Jimmy Garoppolo, that first injury that he had in 2021 when he injured his his thumb that he injured first when he was out in Tennessee, whatever that was. That injury, again, that was the tight end getting beat on a long pass protection. George Kittle gets beat. You get the sack there. So some of this is scheme. The offensive line on the Niners gets so much blame for these injuries, and I don't think it's actually the offensive line's fault.
Niners have added two pretty good blocking tight ends. Braden Willis is a solid blocker, more down the field than on the line of scrimmage. But Cam Latu's got power in the lower body, long arms, and I'm really looking for him to kind of show himself both as a downfield threat, but maybe most importantly as an inline blocker. Somebody's got to be able to go stripe on the defensive end and keep them off the quarterback. Or it's going to be another year where we see a parade of quarterbacks. Simple as that. Justin Lomker makes a super chat donation. Thank you, Justin. He said, could the no trade market for Lance be more of an advertisement for Sam Darnold? That being said, what would you trade with Sam for? I mean, once again, I'm not in a rush to move off of my quarterback inventory because of how valuable quarterbacks are. But only reason I would trade a quarterback is if, you're not going to carry 4. You're only going to carry 3. They're not going to carry 2. They're going to carry 3, but they're not going to carry 4. So what do you do if Brandon Allen really is lights out, as my scouting buddy says he's going to be? Somebody's going to have to be cut or traded, and you're not going to cut or trade. You're not going to trade. You're not going to cut Sam Darnold. You're not going to cut Trey Lance, in my mind. So that means they both would have to be traded, or one of them would have to be traded. Let's just say. I would say that I want a defensive end. I want a defensive end that can help me win a Super Bowl, or maybe a defensive back, or maybe a right tackle, or maybe a running back. I want something that's going to make me a better Super Bowl contender this year. If it's, I guess if it was Darnold, maybe I'd be willing to take a day 2 or day 3 pick, probably more of a day 3 pick at the cut down. But you got to remember this: if a team's trading for Sam Darnold, they're probably up against it as well. Maybe you could get a third. I would say, in the 3 to 5 range. Obviously, I want a 3, but the least that I would take is a 5. But I guess I would take whatever I could get if I was going to cut somebody. What do you think?
I think if it's an advertisement for anybody, saying that there's no trade market for Lance is more of an advertisement for a trade for Trey Lance, telling people you need to up your offers. I think that's really, again, that kind of goes back to our discussion on the whole thing at the beginning when it came to Schefter. I said, I don't think it's that they aren't getting people calling them. I just don't think the interest is as high as the 49ers want it to be in terms of what they're being offered. So that's, I think, where that direction goes.
Ken Martin throws you a chat here. Jackie says, would the league not get a book on Lance? What does less than Purdy, or who does less than Purdy in the pass game with issues in accuracy, anticipation, processing, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, that again, that's where Ken's going with this is, everybody's saying that the defense, they have a book on Lance with Purdy with what's going on, and he's saying, well, wouldn't that same thing happen with Lance? And the answer is absolutely. If that's the case, it goes for all three of the quarterbacks on the 49ers. In terms of issues with accuracy, anticipation, and processing, all those kind of things, that's all to be seen on how that plays out moving forward. There's different levels of all this with these guys right now, so we'll see how it plays out. But I would say, yeah, if you want to say that the league's going to get a book on Brock Purdy, then that's with every quarterback on the team.
Last one, Jay Mill, Hamilton Ticats or the Montreal Alouettes tonight, Larry? Who are you and Jack picking in that one? He says, go Alouettes.
I'm going. Yeah, I'm with you on this one, Jay Mill. If I got to pick one of these two, I'm more. I've always been more of a Montreal Alouette fan than a Hamilton Tiger Cat fan. That's because I'm old, and that's just every year on back in the early '80s, like '81, '82, you turn on ESPN at 9:00 at night, you can watch any CFL game you want.
You ever been to Hamilton?
The closest I've only been to Victoria, British Columbia on the little, the thing that takes you from Seattle over there. That's the only part of Canada I've ever been to.
Oh man, I've been to Hamilton. I walked the mall in Hamilton when I was scouting in the Canadian League. The booming metropolis. It's I don't know what to say.
My claim to fame with the CFL is that my high school football coach played for the Edmonton Eskimos. And
what was his name?
Pete Laverato,
Okay.
and so he was back in the 80s. But so I remember there was a lot of discussions. He would tell me quite a bit of stories about his days with Warren Moon. That's actually how I learned how to throw a corner route. Was him telling me how Warren Moon used to throw it.
Warren Moon was incredible. Marcus Allen's brother, Damon Allen, was a pretty good player for Edmonton. Edmonton was a kind of a powerhouse in the Canadian League. I'm rooting for my man Cody Fajardo, who's a former Nevada quarterback. Who's got some talent, and I believe he's an Alouette. So there you go. Go Alouettes. I got the Alouettes. I skip the points. Go Alouettes and give the points.
There you go.
Jack, what do you got cooking on the channel the rest of the week? Tease whatever you want. Obviously you're doing a great job with your channel. We always love your content, but keep it rolling and give us what you got cooking either the next day or two or coming up next week. This is kind of the calm before the storm of training camp.
Yeah, well, right now I'm doing the last couple of days I've been talking a lot about Trey Lance. So, and with it, what I've done is basically where he needs to improve, what he does well, and I'm going to be doing that with all the quarterbacks. So that's what's up on the channel right now for the last couple of days. Probably get into Sam Darnold next. That'll be coming up tomorrow. So keep it locked in there. And then also over on the at the PD site, doing very similar stuff in terms of just doing it with the writing side though instead. I think people are interested in it, and the main thing for me is I want to show both sides of it with all the quarterbacks, what they do, where they need to improve. We're going to do that with Brock Purdy too. Where they need to, what it is that they do well. So do that in separate videos and in separate articles. I think it makes it more digestible for everybody.
That train that we hear in the background, where's that train going?
That is the 12:30 express down to Fresno.
Nice. Jack, good to see you. I'm going to play a couple of my spots here on the end, but we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you maybe next Friday.
Absolutely. Let's do it. See you on Friday, and have a great weekend, everybody.
You too. The great Jack Hammer in the house on the Krueg Show, and of course on his channel as well. All right, let me do this. We are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, best barbecue in all of Northern California. Huge fan of Pig and a Pickle. Go get the brisket. Go get the brisket chili. You will not be disappointed. And they got 2 locations. They're in Emeryville, open Wednesday through Sunday. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County, right there in Corte Madera. Damon Stainbrook, the owner of Pig and a Pickle, best barbecue in all of Northern California. Get the brisket.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show, Terradome says that New York-style sausage guy will make you an offer you can't refuse. That's right, the great Pasquale in the house. Somebody in here's asking a question. What was it? Let's see. Somebody's asking about what's in the sausage. J Mill, what's in those sausages, Don Batanti? Oh, it's just a lot of goodness. Digital Drew says, like the stream on the way out. Thank you, Digital. Hope you're having a great day in Chicago, Chi-Town. Love that city. What else? Well, we had one in here asking about if I was doing post game on the Giants tonight, and I don't see it here for some reason. Maybe I missed it. But so as far as the rest of the day on the channel, I'm going to watch that Warrior NBA draft post game. They're going to introduce their 2 draft picks today, and I'll watch that. I'll do a little video on that. Giants go tonight against the D-backs. I will be doing a post game tonight, most likely. So look for that later on tonight. And tomorrow at 9 a.m., we're going to have the coach, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. The coach is going to be with us for our first live stream. We'll talk a little football with him. And, man, I'm fired up about it because I really like the coach's fire. I like his content. He's a really smart guy, and he knows ball. So when you know ball and you're legit, you're not just some guy who goes crazy on Twitter, 175 tweets a day. You know who I'm talking about. If you actually know your ball, you're welcome on this show. And Grant discovered the coach. Or just the coach and Grant hooked up. And then I said to Vish, I'm like, man, the coach is awesome. And he's like, yeah, you want his number? And I said, yeah, man, have him give me a call. So Coach and I wrapped. He's going to be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. And I'm really looking forward to that. We're hopefully going to do things on the regular because I think his content's really, really good. If you're one of the couple hundred people still hanging in the chat here as we are an hour and a half into this stream, we are at 19,240 subscribers. We've picked up almost 1,000 subscribers in the last 4 weeks alone. We've had over close to 650,000 views of our content in the last month. So please hit like, please hit subscribe. If you hit like, it just helps the algorithm, helps more people kind of find our shows. And then if you hit subscribe, you'll just get an alert. If you hit that notification bell, every time we go live, you'll get an alert. Hey, we're going live. And if you want to join us, do. And if you don't, I totally get it. And then, of course, you want to be a channel member. Channel members pay $4.99 to be members a month, and we give them some exclusive content, and we'll do more of that exclusive content this summer in training camp. I've got some big things to announce on the Niner front in the next week to 10 days. We'll have some incredible stuff coming out of training camp this summer, both on 95.7 The Game and down at 49ers. We'll tell you more about that, the particulars on that in the next couple of weeks. But we are at 19,240 subs, 241 subs. So now people are subbing right now. But yeah, if you're one of the 200 plus people still hanging, if you've yet to subscribe, please do. My son Kevin is putting together lots of good videos on the Niners, the Giants, the Warrior draft. We're Bay Area sports. You know, I'm a Bay Area sports fan, so that's what we're covering almost exclusively. Look at Roy. Roy, this is the We Don't Like Trey podcast. Oh, Roy, poor Roy. Can't help you, Roy. Can't help you, brother. Anyway, hope everybody has a great rest of your Friday, and it's time for me to hit the gym and do some lifting. You know, once upon a time, I could bench 275, and I told myself I got to get to 250. And I'm not talking about 250 pounds. I'm talking about 250 pounds on the bench. I if I could 225, I used to be able to do 225 like 11 or 12 times. And, now my kid is outlifting me. I mean, that, you're slipping when your kid starts outlifting you. I'll never get to 275 again as far as putting that up. I won't even try it. But, if I could do 225 5 times and get to about 250 max, I'll be happy. I'll feel like, that was all right. So I got to get in the gym and do some lifting. And G Martinez says Kevin deserves a new car, Krug. No, seriously. Well, no, he's got a Honda CRV that we spent some money on not that long ago, but he's a good kid and he's doing some great stuff. And follow him on Twitter. He's a good follow on Twitter. Just look up Kevin Krueger, and he's a smart kid and he's got his own tweets. Sometimes I'll retweet him to help him along, but he's a good kid. He's an honest kid, and he's helping me grow this channel, and he's doing a phenomenal job. So yesterday was an incredible day on the channel. We put out a video yesterday on the Warrior draft that got over 10,000 views. And I was like, wow, Warrior. I didn't know there was that kind of audience for the Warriors, but yeah, Trace Jackson Davis from Indiana, did a little reaction video to him and the kid from Santa Clara being drafted. By the way, I talked to Bill Duffy. We're going to get some of the Warrior draft picks on with us, including their first round pick in the next week. Also, I talked to Ray Ritter today, the PR man for the Warriors. Larry Harris is going to be he's traveling today back to the Midwest. But Larry is going to join us within the next week to break down the Warriors rookie class and what they've gotten done and what their offseason looks like as they pivot from the draft to summer league. So I'm really looking forward to that. Larry Harris is one of the best in the biz, and Bill Duffy's a great guy as well. Bomber T throws in, do some jujitsu, Larry. The gym is a waste of time. I'm not saying jujitsu is not valuable. I'm sure it's good. Spidey says, I just do body weight exercises. You know what amazed me the most is when I did an interview with Herschel Walker, and he told me that all he ever did, he would have one of his buddies sign him out of the University of Georgia's mandatory weightlifting, and all he did was sit-ups, push-ups, and pull-ups. Herschel Walker, the guy was just yoked beyond belief. The guy had just traps and delts and freaking chest and lats and the whole push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. That's it. That is unbelievable. G Martinez says, yoga, Larry, yoga. Now, my wife got me doing yoga. I will say this. I had no respect for yoga until I started doing it. It is so freaking hard. Holding those poses and the balance and and, touch your left elbow outside your knee. And it was really good for the core. But to me, I like a little treadmill, a little lifting, maybe a little stretching, some pickup basketball. Nothing crazy. The last thing I want to do, I said, I'm going to put some, my buddy from the gym used to say, you don't want it like I want it. And I'd be like, his name was Pika. I'd be like, Pika, you're right. I don't want it like you want it. But I also don't want to tear my Achilles at age 53. All right, guys, have a great day. Hit like and subscribe. Give the channel some support. Also, by the way, if you want to support the channel, we're offering merch. So T-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, they're all there. Go check it out on our YouTube channel. There's a link, and you can order directly. And believe it or not, every person that orders any merchandise at all, I do an individual video for each one of them, just saying thank you and just a little shout out. I mean, it seems like if you're going to take the time to go buy merch on my YouTube channel, I can take the time to do a little video thanking you for supporting us. So All In says, peace out, homies. Bomber T says, Terror Dome, the water was fresh back then. He says, here we go. Terror Dome says, born in 62, Tom Cruise, Herschel Walker, Jerry Rice, my wife, they preserve well. Terror Dome, good seeing you. Hope everybody has a phenomenal weekend. Go Giants against the D-backs. And, man, it'll be training camp before long. It will be here. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you